Speaking of other areas of secrecy, we've been hearing in the news over the last, the last couple of weeks about various things that are coming to the fore within the Catholic Church. Particularly over the last couple of days, we've been hearing about Cardinal Brady, and there's a major outcry at the moment for him to resign over his, I'm going to use the word alleged, cover-up of the actions of Father Brendan Smith, one of the most notorious clerical abusers. I know you've written quite a bit about religion and the influence religion has had on Irish society. I mean, what would be your thoughts on the current goings on?
Well, I have kind of thoughts as opposed to conclusions, because I don't know what should be done about the situation. There are many aspects of this which I think need to be considered, and I think the problem is that public discussion isn't set up to just consider all the aspects that need to be considered and weigh things in the balance. We have a very emotive public discussion in which a media which is intent upon destroying the church finds it convenient to hide behind the victims of abuse. As soon as you say something like that, people say, you're an apologist for the church. I'm not. I don't care. At the end of the day, what happens to church in this context? What should happen should be what deserves to happen. And all of the abusers should get their just desserts. All of those who covered up should get their just desserts. But it isn't possible to have a reasonable discussion, because you will be witch hunted just as surely as the bishops if you make the slightest faltering suggestion in relation to this and the complexity of it. There are many aspects of it, that on the one hand, of course, Brendan Smith was a monster, and the charge against the Cardinal is very grave, in that it wasn't simply a question of him covering up a crime or refusing to report a crime that had already been committed. The much more serious issue is that there was somebody with a condition, a psychotic condition, which was being let loose at liberty to reoffend without and he didn't intervene there. That, for me, is the crux of it. So, in a sense, we need to almost to go into the moment to see what the mindset, the mens rea, was at the time. If you take it from the internal Catholic point of view, which I don't say that it's a definitive perspective, but it is a point of view within the equation. The culture at the time was that the church dealt with these matters internally, that there was a punishment which was defrocking or removal of the right to say Mass and the sacraments and so on. Within the culture of Catholicism, naturally, this was regarded as a very grave punishment, perhaps more grave than anything the civil power could inflict on a priest. That's not how our secularized civil society sees it now. There are many issues, which require a nuanced look, without it being, and it should be possible to do that without somebody pointing a finger at you and saying, you're trying to cover up for bishops. I'm not trying to cover up for anybody. I'm saying that we should have more intelligent conversations about things.
I'm going to finish up on this and we'll go to questions and answers then, but just a question that I've been thinking about over the last couple of days as all this discussion has come out, and it kind of came to a head this morning. I was listening to a radio program on the way into work, and I think it was Jerry Ryan was saying that this is possibly going to mean the end of the Catholic Church as we know it in Ireland. I mean, first of all, I think that that's a wildly overstated remark, but let's just assume that it is. If we were to see the death knell of the Catholic Church in Ireland, what do you think that would mean? Would that be a good thing or a bad thing in terms of our culture?
I think it would be a disastrous thing in terms of our culture, but for complicated reasons. First of all, I would say, that these are very complex questions. I mean, I've written 2 books recently. I have another one coming out next week about faith and what it means to me in this culture, what hope means in this culture, what is it possible to function as a human being without a transcendent sense of hope. These questions which nobody asks, these are to me the fundamental religious questions. Who am I? Where did I come from and where am I going? So generally when people like Jerry Ryan were talking about religion or Catholicism, they're talking about an institution, and they're talking about a very crude idea of adherence to a particular kind of moral program, membership of a certain club, observance of certain rituals. But what I think we've lost in this society a long time since is the sense that religion is actually, it starts in here. Christianity starts in here, and that's the problem. That when we it might seem now a good idea to scrap this institution and throw it in the skip. The problem is that a greater part of ourselves will be attached to that institution in the skip. The capacity of us as human beings to connect with the infinite, absolute meaning of reality. The Catholic Church in Ireland has been guilty far more, in my view, than it's been guilty in other areas of distorting and corrupting the Christian message, to the extent that almost nobody now understands what Christ was actually saying. And I think that's the real problem, that we already had a damaged religious psyche, which of course is the reason that this stuff happened. I mean, the Pope said this recently, and there was a huge outcry because people didn't know exactly what he was saying, but this is what he meant. That if we had a healthy religious culture to begin with, these abuses wouldn't have happened. It was precisely because it had been degraded and perverted already, before a single hand or finger was laid on a child, that this was almost inevitable. So that's the problem. I mean, the institution is extraordinarily flawed, imperfect, corrupted. But it happens to be the cultural mechanism by which, as a society, we transmit the most fundamental ideas and concepts about our existence. And, people may think we can be better off without it, but it's never been tried. No society has survived more than 3 generations without a belief in the transcendent, without a cultural belief in the transcendent. So, I think that, it might seem a good idea to be gung-ho against the church, but we have to question what is it going to mean in the long term, and, what are our children going to hope for if we take this away for good.